Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started ringing. He almost spilled the hot liquid on his uniform as he jumped up from his chair. The bridge of the New Horizon was small but clean, with 4 main stations, and a big window showing the stars ahead. "What's going on, Amy?" Jake asked, as he walked to the communication station where Amy Rogers was sitting. Her face looked worried as she stared at the screens in front of her. "Sir, I'm getting some strange signals. They're not coming from Earth or any of our colonies. The computer says they're completely unknown," Amy said. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. "Dr. Lisa." Blake looked up from her science station. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and smart eyes. "Jake, I'm reading at least 12 large ships moving toward us. They're big, much bigger than anything we've ever built." Pete Collins crawled out from under a control panel where he had been fixing something. His hands were dirty with grease, and he had a worried look on his face. "Captain, whoever they are, they have some serious technology. My sensors are going crazy trying to figure out what kind of engines they're using." Jake sat down in his captain's chair and looked out at the stars. The New Horizon was just a small exploration ship with a crew of 20 people. They had left Earth 6 months ago to study new planets and look for signs of life. They never expected to find life that could build spaceships. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. "About 10 minutes at their current speed," Lisa answered. She was still looking at her instruments with growing concern. "Jake, these ships are armed. I can see weapon systems that look very advanced." Jake felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his voice calm. "Amy, try to contact them. Send them a message saying we come in peace and want to talk." Amy's fingers danced over her controls. "I'm trying, sir, but I don't know what language to use. I'm sending basic mathematical signals and some simple pictures." The large screen at the front of the bridge, small dots appeared. As they got closer, the dots became huge ships that looked like nothing humans had ever seen. They were dark and angular, with strange lights running along their sides. The biggest ship was at least 10 times larger than the New Horizon. "My God," Pete whispered. "Look at the size of those things." The alien ships moved into a formation around the New Horizon. Jake counted 15 ships in total, each one bristling with weapons. The human ship looked like a tiny toy surrounded by giants. "Captain, I'm getting a signal," Amy said excitedly. "It's not like anything I've ever heard, but the computer is trying to translate it." A harsh, mechanical voice came through the speakers. The words were strange and hard to understand, but the meaning was clear. "A small vessel. You are surrounded. Your species is unknown to us. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Jake stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. His crew looked at him with scared faces, waiting for orders. He had trained for many situations, but never for meeting alien life that wanted to attack them. "Amy, can you send them a response?" "I think so, sir. Computer has figured out some of their language. Tell them we are humans from the planet Earth. We are explorers and scientists. We do not want to fight. We want to be friends and learn from each other." Amy worked quickly to translate Jake's words. After a few moments, she sent the message to the alien ships. The response came back quickly, and it sounded confused. "Humans. Earth. These words are not in our databases. You claim to be explorers, yet you do not flee or beg for mercy. Explain this unusual behavior." Lisa looked at Jake with surprise. They seemed confused that we're not panicking. "Maybe their computers expected us to run away," Pete said from his station. "But where could we go? They're faster than us and they have more ships." Jake thought for a moment. These aliens seemed to expect fear, but he had always believed that staying calm was the best way to handle dangerous situations. His father had taught him that when he was young, "Amy, tell them that we stay calm because we want to understand them. We are curious about their technology and their culture. We believe that different species can work together and help each other." The alien voice came back again, sounding even more confused. "Curiosity? You face destruction, yet you speak of learning and cooperation. Species behavior does not match our records of other weak races." Dr. Blake stood up and walked over to Jake. "Captain, they keep calling us weak. Maybe they think we're not dangerous because we don't have big weapons like theirs. That might be true, Jake said. But maybe that's not a bad thing. If they think we're weak, they might not see us as a threat. Pete was still studying his instruments. Captain, their technology is incredible. The energy readings from their engines alone are amazing. If we could learn how they work, it could change everything for humanity. Amy received another message. From the alien ships, you will prepare for boarding. We will examine your vessel and your species. Do not resist or you will be eliminated. Jake felt sweat on his forehead, but he kept his voice steady. Tell them we welcome them aboard our ship. We'll be happy to show them around and answer their questions. The crew stared at Jake in shock. Lisa was the first to speak. Jake, are you sure about this? We don't know anything about them. Could be very dangerous. They could destroy us right now if they wanted to, Jake replied. But they're asking to board instead of shooting. That means they're curious about us too. If we cooperate, maybe we can find a peaceful solution. Amy translated Jake's response and sent it to the alien fleet. The reply came back quickly, and it sounded even more puzzled than before. Cooperation acknowledged. However, your response patterns do not match expected behavior for a primitive species facing superior force. Prepare for immediate boarding. Any sudden movements will result in termination. Pete was shaking his head in amazement. They keep calling us primitive, but they sound like they've never met anyone who didn't either fight or run away. That says something about the galaxy, Lisa said quietly. Maybe most species they meet are either very aggressive or very scared. Jake looked at each of his crew members. Amy was nervous, but still working at her station. Lisa was scared, but curious about the aliens. Pete looked excited despite the danger. They were good people, and he was proud to serve with them. Listen, everyone, Jake said. We knew when we left Earth that exploration could be dangerous, but we also knew it could lead to amazing discoveries. This might be the most important day in human history. We're going to meet the first alien species humanity has ever encountered. The alien ships were moving closer now. Jake could see details on their hulls through the main screen. Strange symbols were carved into the metal, and lights pulsed in patterns he didn't understand. Amy, send them one more message, Jake said. Tell them we are honored to meet them, and we hope this is the beginning of a long friendship between our species. Amy sent the message and waited for a reply. When it came, the alien voice sounded completely confused. Honored. Friendship. Your species displays behavior unknown to our databases. Boarding will commence in 2 minutes. Prepare for inspection and interrogation. Jake sat back down in his captain's chair and took a deep breath. In 2 minutes, humans and aliens would meet face to face for the first time. He had no idea what would happen next, but he was determined to make the best impression possible for all of humanity. The alien boarding party looked nothing like humans had imagined aliens would look. Commander Zix was tall and covered in dark scales that shimmered under the lights of the New Horizon. He had 4 arms and eyes that glowed with a red light. Behind him walked 3 other aliens, each carrying weapons that hummed with energy. Jake Morrison stood in the main corridor with his crew to welcome the visitors. He had put on his best uniform and told everyone to smile and be polite. The aliens stopped in front of the humans and studied them carefully. I am Commander Zix of the Krathri Empire, the lead alien said through a small device that translated. His words, You are the leader of this vessel. Yes, I'm Captain Jake Morrison. Welcome to our ship, the New Horizon. These are my officers, Dr. Lisa Blake, Engineer Pete Collins, and Communications Officer Amy Rogers. Commander Zix looked at each human with his glowing red eyes. He seemed confused by their friendly behavior. You do not show proper fear in the presence of your superiors. Koa, Jake kept smiling. We're not afraid because you haven't given us any reason to be afraid. You could have destroyed our ship, but instead you came to talk. That makes us think you're reasonable people. The alien commander made a sound that might have been surprise. Reasonable? You're conquerors of 1,000 worlds? We have destroyed entire civilizations. Dr. Lisa Blake stepped forward with genuine interest in her voice. Really? That's fascinating from an anthropological perspective. How do you manage the logistics of controlling so many different worlds? What drives your expansion across the galaxy? The aliens looked at each other. In confusion, one of them whispered something to Commander Zix in their own language. "You wish to study our methods of conquest?" the commander asked. "Well, yes," Lisa replied eagerly. "Any civilization that can coordinate across galactic distances must have incredible organizational systems. I'd love to learn about your government structure and communication networks." Pete Collins couldn't contain his excitement. "And your technology is amazing? Those ships you have must use some kind of exotic matter propulsion. The energy readings I got were off the charts. How do you generate that much power, Commander?" Zix turned to one of his officers and spoke in rapid alien language. The other alien shook his head and made gestures that looked worried. Amy Rogers was busy recording everything with her equipment. "Commander, would it be possible to get a sample of your language structure? I'm a linguist, and I've never seen syntax patterns like yours. The way your verbs modify based on speaker authority is incredibly sophisticated." The alien commander stared at the humans for a long time. "Your species responds to superior force with ... curiosity?" "Of course, Jake said. "This is the most important day in human history. We're meeting people from another world for the first time. We want to learn everything we can about you." Commander Zix walked around the small group of humans, studying them from different angles. "Show me your ship's weapons," he commanded. Jake looked embarrassed. "Well, we don't really have any weapons. This is a science vessel. We have some basic defensive shields, and that's about it." "No weapons?" The alien's voice rose in pitch. "You travel through space with no weapons?" Pete grinned. "We didn't know anyone else was out here to fight with. Besides, weapons would just take up space we need for scientific equipment." Lisa nodded in agreement. "Our mission is to study new planets and look for signs of life. Weapons would send the wrong message if we met friendly aliens." Commander Zix spoke rapidly to his officers again. They seemed to be having an argument in their alien language. "You expected to meet friendly aliens?" the commander asked. Amy smiled. "Brightly, we hoped to. Any species that can develop space travel must be pretty intelligent. Smart people usually prefer talking to fighting." The alien commander was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We will examine your vessel. You will show us all areas and explain your technology." "Absolutely," Jake said. "I'd be happy to give you a tour." "Lisa, why don't you start with the science labs? I think our guests would find them interesting." Dr. Blake led the aliens down the corridor toward the laboratory section. As they walked, she explained what each room was for. "This is our biology lab where we study plant and animal samples from new planets. That's our geology lab for rock and mineral analysis. And over there is our main computer center where we process all our data." Commander Zix stopped at the biology lab and looked inside. The room was full of equipment for studying living things. "You study life on other worlds." "That's our main job," Lisa said proudly. "We want to understand how life develops in different environments. So far, we've found some amazing microorganisms and a few simple plants." Pete Collins joined the group and started showing off the engineering sections. "This is our power core. It's much smaller than what you guys must use, but it's pretty efficient for a ship our size. And over here is our fabrication unit where we can make replacement parts." One of the alien officers examined the human technology carefully, made notes on a strange device, and shook his head several times. Commander Zix asked, "How many ships does your species have?" Jake thought for a moment. "We have maybe 50 or 60 ships total. Most of them are around Earth or near our few colonies. This is actually one of the farthest any human ship has ever traveled." The aliens looked shocked. Commander Zix spoke to his officers again in their own language. They seemed very surprised by something. 50 ships, Commander repeated. "Your entire species has only 50 ships." Amy nodded. "We only started leaving our solar system about 30 years ago. Before that, we were stuck on just one planet." "One planet," Commander Zix said. "Slowly, your entire species lived on one planet for your whole history." "That's right," Lisa said. "Earth is our home world. It's a pretty nice place, though it can be dangerous sometimes." Pete laughed. "Dangerous is right. We've got volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, ice ages, and diseases. Plus all the animals that want to eat you." The aliens stared at Pete like he was speaking nonsense. "Your world tries to kill you?" asked one of the alien officers. Well, it's not trying to kill us exactly, Jake explained. It's just a very active planet. Lots of weather, geological activity, and competitive wildlife. Humans learn to adapt to all of it. Lisa was getting excited as she talked about Earth. It's actually a wonderful place for evolution. All those challenges made life very creative. We have millions of different species, all finding ways to survive in different environments. Commander Zix looked very confused, and humans survived in this dangerous environment. We didn't just survive, Amy said proudly. We became the dominant species. We learned to use tools, build cities, and eventually leave the planet altogether. Pete added, some of the stuff we do for fun would probably seem crazy to most people. Climb mountains, dive into deep oceans, and jump out of perfectly good aircraft just for the thrill of it. The alien commander made that surprised sound. Again, you deliberately expose yourselves to danger for entertainment? Sure, Jake said. Life's more interesting when there's a little risk involved. Besides, facing challenges makes you stronger and smarter. Commander Zix turned to his officers and had a long conversation in their alien language. The other aliens kept looking at the humans and shaking their heads. Finally, the commander turned back to Jake. We will return to our ships now. We must report these findings to the Galactic Council. Great, Jake said. We'd love to meet more of your people. Maybe we could visit one of your planets sometime. The alien commander stared at Jake for a long moment. You would want to visit a world controlled by conquerors? Absolutely. We could learn so much from a more advanced civilization, and maybe we could share some of our knowledge too. As the aliens walked back toward their shuttle, Commander Zix stopped and looked back at the humans. Your species is very strange. Jake smiled. We get that a lot, even from other humans. After the aliens left, the human crew gathered on the bridge. Everyone was excited about the encounter. Did you see how confused they looked? Amy asked. It's like they've never met anyone who wanted to be friends. Lisa nodded. They seemed to expect every species to either fight them or cower in fear. I think our response really surprised them. Pete was already back at his engineering station, analyzing the scans he had taken of the alien technology. Their ships are incredible. I think I figured out how their energy systems work. If we could learn to build engines like that, it would revolutionize human space travel. Jake sat in his captain's chair and looked out at the alien fleet that still surrounded them. I think we just made first contact go better than anyone expected. Now we wait and see what happens next. 2 hours after the aliens returned to their ships, the New Horizons lights started flickering. Hey. Jake Morrison looked up from his reports as the bridge lights dimmed and brightened several times. Pete, what's going on with our power? Jake called. Out. Pete Collins crawled out from under his engineering station with a worried look. Captain, someone is messing with our systems from the outside. The aliens are testing us somehow.
Dr. Lisa Blake
checked her instruments. I'm reading power fluctuations throughout the ship. Looks like they're sending some kind of signal that interferes with our electrical systems. Amy Rogers turned from her communication station. Sir, I'm getting a message from Commander Zix. He says they're conducting tests to understand human responses to system failures. Jake frowned. Tests? What kind of tests? As if answering his question, the ship's gravity suddenly turned off. Everyone floated up from their seats, and loose objects began drifting around the bridge. Artificial gravity is down, Pete announced as he grabbed onto a handrail. This definitely isn't an accident. Lisa pushed herself over to her science station, moving smoothly in the zero gravity. Actually, this is interesting. I've always wondered what it would be like to do experiments in true weightlessness. Jake watched his crew adapt to the floating environment. Amy was already figuring out how to use her communication equipment while floating. Pete was pulling himself along the walls to check different systems. How are you all handling this so well? Jake asked. We trained for zero-gravity situations back on Earth, Amy replied. Plus, this is kind of fun once you get used to it. Gravity came back on suddenly and everyone dropped back into their seats. Before they could get comfortable, all the lights went out completely. In the darkness, Pete's voice was calm. Emergency lighting should kick in any second now. Small red lights came on, giving the bridge an eerie glow. Lisa was already moving to her station. I can still run basic scans with emergency power. Aliens are probably watching to see if we panic in the dark. Are you panicking? Jake asked his crew. Not really, Amy said. We've had power failures during training exercises. This is just like that, except with aliens watching. Pete was checking his instruments by the dim red light. Actually, Captain, I'm more interested in how they're doing this. They're somehow interfering with our systems without physically connecting to them. The technology is amazing. Commander Zix's voice came through the speakers. Human vessel, your systems are failing. How do you respond? Jake pressed the communication button. We're working on repairs, Commander. Our crew is trained for emergency situations. You are not requesting assistance or offering surrender, should we? Jake asked. We appreciate the offer, but we like to try fixing things ourselves first. There was a long pause before the alien commander responded. Continue with your repairs. Lights came back on, but now the air circulation system started making strange noises. Pete grabbed his tools and headed for the door. Where are you going? Jake asked. To fix the air recycler before it breaks completely, Pete replied. Want to come watch? It's actually pretty interesting how these systems work. Jake followed Pete down to the engineering section. Behind them, Lisa and Amy continued working at their stations like nothing unusual was happening in the engineering bay. Pete opened a large panel and started examining the machinery inside. See, Captain, the aliens are sending electromagnetic pulses that interfere with our electronic controls, but the mechanical parts still work fine. Can you fix it? Sure, but it'll take some creative thinking. Pete pulled out some tools and started working. This is actually a good learning experience. If we can figure out how to protect our systems from this kind of interference, it'll help us build better ships. Jake watched Pete work. Even though they were being tested by powerful aliens, his engineer seemed completely focused on solving the technical problem. Back on the bridge, Lisa was taking notes on everything that was happening. Amy, are you recording all of this? Every bit of it, Amy replied. The linguistic analysis alone will keep me busy for months. The way they phrase their questions tells us a lot about how they think. The air circulation system stopped working entirely. Pete's voice came over the intercom. Don't worry, everyone. We have about 6 hours of air without the recycler. Should have it fixed in 2 hours. Commander Zix's voice interrupted. Human vessel, your life support is failing. This is your final opportunity to surrender. Jake pressed the communication button again. Thank you for the warning, Commander, but we think we can handle it. Our engineer is very good at his job. You would risk death rather than accept assistance. Lisa answered this time. Commander, with respect, we don't think you're actually trying to kill us. If you wanted us dead, you could have destroyed our ship from the beginning. This seems more like you're testing how we react to problems. There was another long pause. Then Commander Zix asked, What makes you believe this is a test? Well, Amy said, joining the conversation, you could have simply observed us from a distance if you wanted to study us. Instead, you boarded our ship and now you're creating controlled emergencies. It's exactly what we would do if we wanted to understand how another species behaves under pressure. Jake smiled at his crews. Quick thinking. Plus, the timing is too convenient. Each system failure happens just when we finish adapting to the previous one. Pete's voice came over the intercom again. Hey, Captain, I figured out how they're doing this. They're using rotating frequency electromagnetic waves. It's actually pretty clever. Can you block it? Jake asked. Maybe give me another hour, Commander? Zix spoke again. Your engineer claims he can counteract our technology? Pete's pretty smart, Jake replied. He once fixed a fusion reactor using spare parts from a food processor. That sounds impossible, Lisa laughed. You haven't met many humans, yet have you. We're pretty good at making impossible things work. The temperature in the ship started rising. Soon everyone was sweating as the environmental controls failed. Amy took off her jacket and rolled up her sleeves. Well, this is uncomfortable, but at least we're not freezing. I've worked in hotter places, Lisa said as she continued her experiments. This reminds me of that summer I spent in the desert studying rock formations. Pete appeared on the bridge, covered in sweat, but smiling. Good news, Captain. Figured out how to modify our shields to block their interference. Bad news is I have to shut down all power for about 10 minutes to install the modifications. Do it, Jake said, without hesitation. Wait, Amy said. Pete, that's really dangerous. If something goes wrong, we could lose life support permanently. Pete shrugged. Then I better not make any mistakes. Commander Zix's voice came through the speakers again. Human vessel. We detect you are attempting to modify your systems. This is extremely dangerous. We know, Jake replied. But that's how humans solve problems. We try things that might not work. What if you fail? Lisa answered, while wiping sweat from her face. Then we'll try something else. Humans don't give up easily. Pete went back to engineering, and all the lights went out again. This time, even the emergency lighting was off. The ship was completely dark and silent. Everyone okay? Jake called out. Fine here, Amy replied. All good, Lisa said. I have to admit, this is a little scary. They sat in the darkness for several minutes. The only sounds were their breathing and the distant noise of Pete working on the modifications. You know, Jake said to break the silence, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the dark. My dad used to tell me that darkness isn't dangerous by itself. It's just the absence of light. How did you get over the fear? Amy asked. Practice, Jake replied. Dad would take me camping and we'd sit outside at night without any lights. After a while, I realized the dark wasn't so bad. Your eyes adjust, and you can see more than you think. Lisa's voice came from the darkness. It's very human, isn't it? Facing your fears by experiencing them directly? I guess so. I never thought about it that way. Suddenly, all the lights came back on. The air circulation started working again. Temperature began dropping back to normal. Pete's voice came over the intercom, sounding very proud. Captain, we now have full protection against electromagnetic interference. They can't mess with our systems anymore. Commander Zix's voice immediately followed. Impossible. Our technology is far superior to yours. Maybe, Jake said, but humans are very good at adapting. We've been dealing with problems our whole history. Your engineer modified your systems in 10 minutes. Our specialist said such. Modifications would take days. Pete's voice joined the conversation. Well, I had good motivation. Plus, human engineering is built to be flexible. We expect things to break and need fixing. Commander Zix was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, We will return to our ships. The Galactic Council must hear about these developments. After the aliens left, Jake looked around at his crew. Everyone looked tired but happy, so he said, How do you think that went? Amy smiled. I think we confused them even more, Good Lisa said. Confused aliens are probably safer than angry. Aliens. Pete was already back at his station, studying the data from their encounter. Captain, I think they expected us to break down and beg for help. Instead, we treated it like a puzzle to solve. Amy Rogers was having the best day of her life. For 3 hours, she had been talking with Vorth, the alien linguist from Commander Zix's ship. They were exchanging information about their languages and cultures through the communication system. So, humans have over 6,000 different languages on just one planet, Vorth asked through the translator device. That's right, Amy replied excitedly. And each language tells us something different about how humans think and see the world. Some languages have 50 different words for snow, while others have dozens of words for different types of rain. Rain, snow, these are weather phenomena. Amy paused. She had been so excited about linguistics that she forgot the aliens might not understand Earth's environment. Yes, rain is water that falls from clouds. Snow is frozen water that falls when it's very cold. Earth has lots of different weather. Water falls from the sky on your planet? All the time, Amy said. Sometimes gently, sometimes in huge storms with lightning and thunder. During hurricane season, we get winds that can blow down buildings. There was a long silence from Vorth. Finally, the alien asked, and humans live through these storms? Sure. We build strong houses and have warning systems. Some people even chase storms for fun. They're called storm chasers. Humans deliberately pursue dangerous weather.
Dr. Lisa Blake had been listening to the conversation while working at her science
Station. She joined in. Oh, that's nothing compared to some of the things humans do. We climb mountains that are covered in ice and snow. We dive to the bottom of oceans where the pressure would crush most materials. We explore caves that go deep underground. Would you do such things? Worth sounded genuinely puzzled. Because they're there, Lisa said simply. Humans are curious. We want to see what's on the other side of the mountain or at the bottom of the sea. Amy continued the conversation. Fourth, what's your home planet like? Kratos Prime is a civilized world. The weather is controlled by our technology. The temperature never varies more than 2 degrees. There are no dangerous animals or geological instabilities. That sounds ... peaceful, Amy said, trying to be polite. But doesn't it get boring? Boring? Why would safety be boring? Lisa and Amy looked at each other. Lisa explained. Humans seem to need some excitement in their lives. If everything was perfectly safe all the time, we'd probably create our own challenges. Create challenges? You would deliberately make your lives more dangerous. We call them sports, Amy said.
Ow.
We race cars at high speeds, jump out of aircraft, climb tall mountains, and swim with dangerous sea creatures. Pete Collins had finished his repairs and joined the conversation. Don't forget extreme sports like snowboarding down mountains or surfing giant waves. Those are really popular. Surfing? Worth asked. Standing on a board and riding ocean waves? Pete explained. You're bigger and more dangerous the wave, the more exciting it is. Vorth was quiet for several minutes. When he spoke again, his voice sounded worried. I must share this information with Commander Zix. Your species deliberately seeks danger for entertainment. Pretty much, Jake Morrison said, joining the conversation from his captain's chair. Humans have always been explorers and risk-takers. It's how we spread across our entire planet and eventually reach space. Tell me about this spreading across your planet, Vorth requested. Lisa took over the explanation. Well, humans started in Africa, but we didn't stay there. We walked. Across deserts, climbed over mountain ranges, and crossed frozen wastelands to reach new lands. You traveled through deserts and frozen wastelands without technology? Our ancestors did, Amy said. They used simple tools and their intelligence to survive in places that should have killed them. What kind of places? Vorth asked. Pete started, listing examples. The Arctic, where the temperature drops so low it can freeze your skin in minutes. Deserts where there's no water for hundreds of miles. Jungles full of poisonous plants and animals that want to eat you. Mountains so high that the air is too thin to breathe properly, Lisa added. Islands surrounded by oceans full of storms and giant sea creatures. And your ancestors survived in all these places? Not just survived, Jake said proudly. They thrived. They learned to build shelters from ice, find water in the desert, and make medicine from jungle plants. Amy was getting excited as she talked about human history. It's a really amazing thing is that they did it without any advanced technology. It's just their brains, simple tools, and the willingness to try new things. But why leave safe places for dangerous ones? Vorth asked. Sometimes they had to, Lisa explained. The climate would change, or food would become scarce. But a lot of times, they left just because they were curious about what was over the next hill. Pete laughed. Some humans still do that. My uncle sold his house and moved to Alaska just because he wanted to see what it was like to live in the wilderness. Alaska? A very cold place where the sun doesn't come up for months during winter, Pete explained. There are bears that can kill a human with one swipe of their paw, and the cold can freeze you solid if you're not careful. Your uncle chose to live there. He loves it. Says it makes him feel alive. Manderzix's voice suddenly interrupted the conversation. Human vessel. Prepare for final evaluation. Jake stood up. What kind of evaluation, Commander? We will create a scenario that tests your species' true nature. If you fail, your ship will be destroyed. Lisa looked worried for the first time. Jake, that sounds serious. I know, Jake replied. But we've handled everything they've thrown at us so far. Vorth's voice came through the communicator, sounding urgent. Captain Morrison, I have been ordered to inform you of the test parameters. Your ship's hull will be breached in 3 locations. You will have 15 minutes to seal the breaches before your atmosphere is completely lost. Amy's face went pale. Hull breaches. That's really dangerous. Pete was already moving toward his tools. How big are these breaches going to be? Each breach will be approximately 1 meter in diameter, Vorth replied. Pete stopped moving. 1 meter? That's huge. We don't have patches big enough for holes that size. Jake felt his heart racing, but he kept his voice calm. Yes. Then we'll have to improvise. Pete, what do we have that could seal holes that big? I'll need to think about it, Pete said, his mind already working on the problem. We have some flexible metal sheets in storage, and maybe we can use the emergency foam sealant. Lisa was checking her instruments. How will they create the breaches? Commander, Zix answered. Our weapons will create precise holes in your hull. You have 2 minutes to prepare. Amy's hands were shaking as she worked at her station. This is really happening. They're actually going to shoot holes in our ship. Jake looked at his crew. For the first time since meeting the aliens, they all looked scared. Listen, everyone. We've trained for hull breach scenarios. We know what to do. Not for 3 breaches at once, Pete said quietly. And not holes this big. Lisa took a deep breath. Okay, let's think about this logically. We need to prioritize which breach to seal first based on location and size. The computer can calculate air loss rates for each breach, Amy said, her voice steadying as she focused on the problem. That will tell us which ones are most critical. Pete was pulling equipment from storage lockers. I'll need help carrying all this gear. Jake, can you and Lisa assist me? Of course, Jake replied. What's the plan? Seal the smallest breach first to reduce overall air loss, then work on the bigger ones, Pete explained. It's going to be dangerous, but it might work. Commander Zix's voice announced, weapons charging. Hull breach procedure will begin in 30 seconds. Amy turned to her communicator. Vorth, can I ask you something? Quickly, the alien linguist replied. Have any other species ever passed this test? There was a pause. No. All previous species either surrendered immediately or their crews panicked and were unable to function. What happened to them? Those who surrendered became part of our empire. Those who panicked, did not survive. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all scared, but they were still working, still preparing, still trying to solve the problem. Know what? Jake said. I'm proud of all of you. Whatever happens in the next 15 minutes, we're going to face it together. Lisa managed a small smile. Just another day in the life of human explorers. Pete hefted his tools and patches. Ready or not, here we go. Amy's voice was steady now. All stations report ready for emergency hull breach procedures. Weapons firing, Commander Zix announced. The ship shuddered as 3 precise holes were blown through the hull. Alarms started ringing, and the air immediately began rushing out into space. Breach locations confirmed, Lisa called out over the noise. Deck 3, Section 2, Deck 4, Section 7, and Deck 2, Section 5. Pete was already running toward the nearest breach. Jake, grab that patch kit. Lisa, bring the emergency sealant. Amy, monitor our air pressure and time remaining. As they raced through the corridors with air rushing past them, toward the holes in their ship. Jake couldn't help but think that this was exactly the kind of impossible situation that humans somehow always found a way to survive. The sound of rushing air filled the new horizon as precious atmosphere escaped through 3 large holes in the ship's hull. Pete Collins ran down the corridor carrying a heavy patch kit, his face showing real fear for the first time since the aliens arrived. Amy, how much time do we have? Jake Morrison shouted over the noise of escaping air. 14 minutes and 30 seconds, Amy Rogers replied, her voice tight with worry. Air pressure is dropping faster than our recycling system can compensate. Dr. Lisa Blake followed Pete with emergency sealant canisters. Which breach do we tackle first? Deck 4, Section 7, Pete called back. It's the smallest, but in the worst location. If we can seal it, the other 2 become manageable. They reached the first breach and found a perfect round hole in the ship's hull. Air was rushing out so fast it was hard to stand near the opening. Through the hole. They could see the stars and the alien ships watching them. Pete started unpacking his equipment with shaking hands. Okay, here's what we need to do. Lisa, I need you to hold this patch while I apply the bonding agent. Jake, keep that sealant ready. Pete, Lisa said quietly. I can see you're scared. Y'all are. Yeah, I'm terrified, Pete admitted as he worked. But being scared doesn't mean we stop trying. Jake helped position the patch over the hole. That's what makes us human, right? We're afraid, but we do what needs to be done anyway. The patch held and the rushing air from that location stopped. Pete wiped sweat from his forehead. 1 down. 2 to go. Let's move. They ran to the second breach on deck 2. This hole was larger, and the air loss was more severe. Amy's voice came over the intercom. 11 minutes remaining. You're doing great, but we need to work faster. Pete looked at the size of the hole and shook his head. This one's too big for a standard patch. We'll have to get creative. What do you need? Jake asked. Help me pull some metal sheeting from that storage panel, Pete said. We'll use it to cover the hole, then seal around the edges. Lisa and Jake started pulling apart the wall panel while Pete prepared the sealant. The work was difficult because the escaping air kept pushing them away from the breach. This is crazy, Lisa said as she struggled with a piece of metal. We're literally tearing apart our own ship to fix it. Whatever works, Jake replied. Humans have always been good at making do with what we have. They managed to get the metal sheeting in place and began sealing the edges. The patch looked rough, but it held. The air stopped rushing out of the second hole. 2 down, Pete said, breathing hard. 1 more to go. Amy's voice was getting worried. 8 minutes left. The last breach is the biggest one. They ran to deck 3 and found the largest hole yet. It was so big that Pete just stared at it for a moment. We don't have anything big enough to cover that, Lisa said. Pete looked around desperately, then his eyes lit up. Yes, we do. Let's me pull that emergency door off its frame. The emergency door? Jake asked. Pete, that's welded to the wall. Not welded, bolted. If we remove the bolts, we can use the door as a patch. They worked frantically to remove the bolts holding the emergency door in place. The work was exhausting. They could all feel the effects of the dropping air pressure. Commander Zix's voice came over the speakers. Human vessel, you have 5 minutes remaining. Your efforts are remarkable, but the task is impossible. Nothing's impossible, Jake grunted as he worked on a stubborn bolt. It's just really, really difficult. Amy's voice joined the conversation from the bridge. Commander Zix, can I ask you something while my friends work? Speak quickly. Why haven't any other species passed this test? Because when faced with certain death, most intelligent beings become paralyzed by fear or make emotional decisions that lead to failure. Pete finally got the door free and started dragging it toward the breach. Commander, you want to know the difference between humans and other species? Explain? We're all scared right now, Pete said as he positioned the door over the hole. I'm terrified. My hands are shaking. But being afraid doesn't shut down our brains. Lisa helped guide the door into position. Fear is just information to us. It tells us something is dangerous, but it doesn't stop us from thinking, Jake started, applying sealant around the edges of the door. We learned a long time ago that being afraid and being smart at the same time is how you survive. The door patch was holding, but barely. Air was still leaking around the edges faster than they could seal them. 3 minutes, Amy announced. Pressure is still dropping. Pete looked at the patch and made a decision. I need to go outside the ship and seal this from the other side. Everyone stopped working and stared at him. Pete, that's suicide, Lisa. You said you can't survive in space without a full pressure suit. We have emergency suits in the airlock, Pete replied. It'll only take 2 minutes to get outside and apply sealant from the exterior. The emergency suits only have 10 minutes of air, Jake pointed out. Then I better work fast. Before anyone could stop him, Pete ran toward the nearest airlock. Jake followed him. Pete, I'm coming with you. No, Jake. The ship needs a captain. The ship needs its engineer alive. I'm coming. They reached the airlock and started putting on emergency spacesuits. The suits were basic and uncomfortable. They would keep them alive in the vacuum of space. Amy's voice came over the radio. 2 minutes remaining. Pete, Jake, please be careful out there. Lisa had stayed at the breach, continuing to apply sealant from the inside. I've got the interior as sealed as possible. It's up to you guys now. Petite and Jake stepped into the airlock and opened the outer door. Space was cold and black around them, filled with alien ships that were watching their every move. They made their way along the hull to the breach site. Pete carried a canister of exterior-grade sealant, while Jake held a portable light. There, Pete said, pointing to the area around the emergency door. I can see where the air is still escaping. They worked quickly, applying sealant to the gaps around the door. The work was difficult in the bulky suits, and they had to be careful not to drift away from the ship. 1 minute remaining. Amy's voice crackled over the radio. Pete finished sealing the last gap just as their suit alarms started beeping. Warning them that their air was running low, they rushed back to the airlock and cycled through just as Amy announced, "Time's up. Checking pressure levels now." Everyone held their breath as Amy ran her diagnostics. "Pressure is holding steady," she finally announced. "All breaches are sealed." The crew collapsed with relief. They had done it. They had sealed 3 major hull breaches in 15 minutes using improvised materials and sheer determination. "Commander." Zix's voice came over the speakers, but he sounded different now. Less commanding, more puzzled. "How did you succeed?" "The task was designed to be impossible." Jake, still catching his breath, answered, "Because we're human. You don't know when. To quit, you were afraid." I could hear the fear in your voices. "Of course we were afraid," Lisa said. "Only an idiot wouldn't be afraid of dying in space. But you continued working despite the fear." Amy nodded, even though the aliens couldn't see her. "Fear doesn't control us, Commander. We control fear." There was a long silence from the alien fleet. Finally, Commander Zix spoke again. "I must report to the Galactic Council immediately. Your species has displayed capabilities that require immediate attention." "Are we in trouble?" Pete asked. "No," Commander Zix replied slowly. "But the galaxy is about to change. We have encountered a species that treats impossible tasks as merely difficult problems. Species that functions optimally while experiencing terror. A species that evolved on a world so dangerous that they consider mortal peril to be ... routine." Jake looked around. At his crew, they were exhausted, scared, and proud all at the same time. "Commander, we'd still like to be friends," Jake said. "We think humans and Krathri could learn a lot from each other." "Yes," Commander Zix said quietly. "I believe you are correct. The Galactic Council will want to establish formal relations with Earth immediately." As the alien ships began moving into escort formation around the New Horizon, Amy started preparing a message to send back to Earth. "What should I tell them?" she asked Jake. Jake smiled. "Tell them we made some new friends. And tell them that being human is apparently more impressive than we thought." Pete was already back at his engineering station, making notes about the repairs. "You know what the funny thing is? We didn't do anything special. We just acted like humans." Lisa nodded. "Maybe that's exactly what made it special." Outside the windows, the alien fleet that had come to test humanity was now escorting them toward a new future where humans would be known throughout the galaxy not as the most fearless species, but as the most frightening one of all.